That's routing. Something that's similar to routing is called conditionally asked questions. So here's an example. Here's an example of both routing and conditionally asked questions. Conditionally asked questions are questions that are they're like routing. They're only asked in certain cases, and they depend on previous answers to previous questions. So here's the example of the routing. Have you ever used academic advising? Yes, I have. Well, if you have, it's going to take you to the very next question, to 21B. If you have not, no, I have not used academic advising, so it's routing that respondent right down to question 22A. Okay, so you haven't used academic advising. Fine, next question. Have you ever used the technology help desk support? No. Well, if you haven't, it's going to route you right to question 23A. So that's an example of routing. Here, this is an example of conditionally asked. So now I said, yes, I have used academic advising. So if I said, yes, I'm going to the next question. Great, you've used academic advising. Will you please rate your level of satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 10? Sure. I am not very pleased with the academic advising, and so I'm actually going to rate this a 3. With 10 being the most pleased, most satisfied. Satisfaction high. 1 through 3, we are saying satisfaction is very low. We're actually calling that dissatisfaction. So if the respondent was dissatisfied, essentially, or they rated this a 1, 2, or 3 for academic advising, we're asking them another question. Please explain why you were dissatisfied. So rate your level of satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10. I answered a 3. I'm going to get this question. Why were you dissatisfied? Because a 3 is much lower than the 10, 9, 8. If I had rated, well, once I answer this question, I'm down to the next question, 22A. Have you ever used technology help desk support? Yes, I have. Okay. If I have, I'm going to the next question. On B, rate your level of satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm pretty happy with the help desk support, so I am rating that an 8 on the scale from 1 to 10. Well, what's going to happen is now that I've rated this an 8, it's actually going to take me to question 23A. Because the only way I would get asked this question, it's conditional. Being asked this question is conditional on rating this a 1, 2, or 3. So that's an example of combining routing along with conditionally asked questions. It's only asked if I've answered this way on a previous question. Some examples here, we have mixed bag here of open-ended and closed-ended questions. This is a closed-ended question. There is no other response choices for the respondent. They can either answer yes or no. This is closed-ended. They can't answer anything else besides a 1 through 10. On the other hand, this question, 21C, is open-ended. They can answer that any way they want to. Their choice. Characteristics of good questions. We have about 4 characteristics of good questions to go through. So there are 4 characteristics. I'm going to put this over here. 4 characteristics of good questions. The first characteristic is being mutually exclusive. the response categories for a question must be mutually exclusive. What that means, if you were to look at a Venn diagram, this would be mutually exclusive. These items do not overlap. No overlap. That's what mutually exclusive means. No overlap. And so here is an example of a question stated, two questions actually. One question where the response choices are mutually exclusive, and another question where they are not mutually exclusive. In this case, the Venn diagram looks like this. The response choices overlap. So how is the respondent supposed to decide if they overlap? How is the respondent supposed to decide which category they go in when there's overlap? Okay, let's look at it specifically. On this side, on the mutually exclusive side, we're asking, please select your household income level from the ranges below. And so you can see that we've started with 0 because we can't really have negative income. And the first response category goes up through 25,000. The second response category goes one above the 25,000, so that there is no overlap between category 1 and category 2. We finally end with the 85,000 plus 1 or higher. So the respondent has a choice from anywhere from 0 up to anything or higher. And they can put themselves in one of the categories because none of them overlap. On this side, you can see we have 17 and younger. Okay, that's not so bad. But you can see the overlap here in the categories. 17 and 17, 20 and 20, 25 and 25, 30 and 30. I mean, somebody who is 31, they could put themselves in category 5. But somebody who is 30, how do they make the choice? They can't make the choice. And so this is not a good question with good response choices. The question is fine. The response choices are not fine. So that's characteristic number 1 of good questions. Characteristic number 2 of good questions. The response categories need to be exhaustive. Okay, what does that mean? Well, they need to be exhaustive in that the respondent should be able to pick one of the categories as an answer. They shouldn't be left hanging. Well, I don't see my response category on there. Before we get to this, let me go back to the previous page, because this also shows what exhaustive means. On the income side, we started with 0, and it goes all the way up through higher than 85 and plus 1, 85,000 plus 1. And so the respondent should be able to locate themselves in any one of these categories. Same thing, if these were mutually exclusive, the same thing would be true for these response categories by adding these words. 17 and younger, so we've touched all our bases there. We're looking at these ranges, and then 45 or older. So I could be 85 years old, and I can still locate myself within these response categories. This ends this part of the module's presentation. Please move on to review the next part